Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. Today we are back with Kṣaṇāti, our part 2, Jupiter transit into Capricorn, Libra to Pisces. Sorry for the delay. So let's dive right in. Hi, Kṣaṇāti. Welcome back.
Namaste, Navjeet. It's so good to be back and to be diving into this transit together again. It's very significant, and I look forward to sharing this with our astrological community.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before we get started, I'd like to do some chants just to kind of set the space and set the area. And because this is a debilitated transit, we'll also be doing a Jupiter chant, chant to the various Mahadevas, the various great gods, and also a chant to my Guru Amma. And then we'll start into this transit discussion together from Libra through Pisces Lagna, how it will be impacting us.
Perfect.
Guru Brahman, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Sahanao Vavatu, Sahanao Bhunaktu, Saha Viryang Karavavahe, Teyasina Bodhitamastu, Ma Vidvashavahe, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Twameva Matacha Pitta Twameva Twameva Bandhu Cha Saka Twameva Twameva Vidya Dravanam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Amriteshware Namaha Twameva Sarvam Amriteshware Namaha Twameva Sarvam Amriteshware Namaha. Om Twameva Matacha Pitta Twameva Twameva Bandhu Cha Saka Twameva Twameva Vijya Dravanam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Amriteshwarema. Om Devanam Cha Risnam Cha Gurum Kanchana Sanibam Puri Bhutam Triloksham Tam Namami Braspati Om Devanam Cha Risnam Cha Gurum Kanchana Sanibam Puri Bhutam Triloksham Tam Namami Braspati Om Devanam Ta Rishnam Cha Gurum Kanchana Shanibam Puri Bhutam Triloksham Tam Namami Brahaspatim Om Gram Grim Gram Saha Gurudeva Namaha. 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 Hari Om. Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste. So as we dive into this transit, it's been affecting us for quite some time now, as Jupiter has been in its debilitation sign of Capricorn traveling with Saturn. We did a video on this intense Saturn-Jupiter conjunction energy. There's been a lot of discussion of it, but the debilitation of Jupiter in itself is certainly something worth discussing and sharing, as it's going to have a big impact on us. As we heard earlier in the chanting, Jupiter is called Guru Deva in Sanskrit, the guru of the gods. It represents our gurus, our spiritual evolution, our religious energy, our ability to connect with a higher power, and to also realize our own highest potential, or the guru that lives inside of all of us. So when that's debilitated, there's a limitation in that bala, in that energy of the higher power energy of our spirituality. That doesn't mean that we can't connect with our spirituality. It just means it takes more work. A lot of times we understand debilitation, and not that it ruins the effects or the significations of a certain planet, but you have to work harder to obtain the rewards of that planet. And so for those of you who have a debilitated Jupiter in your natal chart, it's a time of that Jupiter returning where, again, it might be more challenging or more difficult for you to reap the rewards that relate to Jupiter's position in your chart, but that can even be more beneficial when you do that work. So it is a time to get great rewards spiritually, but it's not going to be easy for any of us. So right now, Jupiter is going to remain in its debilitation sign of Capricorn until it enters Aquarius on April 5th. This is interesting as it travels in Aquarius from April 5th until June 20th. And on June 20th, it will go Vakri. It will go into a retrograde position. So this will bring it back into Capricorn on September 14th. But when a planet is retrograde and debilitated, it goes into a Neech Bhanga Yoga position. This Neech Bhanga Yoga, there's some debate around what the real effect of a Neech Bhanga is. Some say that it cancels or eliminates the effect of the debilitation. I don't believe that to be true, but what you get is some exalted or some beneficial effects. Like when we look at mathematics, two negatives multiplied with each other create a positive. So it has this kind of energy where you're looking at some of the negative effects of the debilitation of Jupiter, which really aren't going to go anywhere. But because of the Neech Bhanga Yoga, there will be some positive benefits. There will be some rewards between September 14th and when Jupiter stops being Vakri or retrograde on 18th of October. So there's about a month-long period there of the Neech Bhanga Yoga. Then on 18th of October, Jupiter will go stationary and start moving forward again in the Capricorn sign. And so it ends its debilitated transit on November 19th. So again, from 18th of October to November 19th, we're looking at its classical debilitated state. So we will get into how this will be affecting the various lagnas now, but just to understand that this transit of the Jupiter debilitation, even though we'll go through a Neech Bhanga and enter Aquarius for a short period of time, it will continue until November 19th. So this energy is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm just going to pull up my screen here so we can begin to discuss the various transits. Now, the first transit that we have here is actually going to be the Libra Transit. So the Libra Transit is pretty significant. This transit, I have the North Indian and the South Indian charts here for those of you who favor one of them. So for the Libra Lagnesh, for the Libra ascendancy, we're looking at Jupiter's position here in the fourth house, in the fourth bhava. Now it says in the ancient astrological text that Jupiter in the fourth house gives a joyful disposition. It gives a happy disposition to the individual. I have Jupiter in my fourth house. It's not in Capricorn, but you know, my mother always said, I came out with a smile on my face. This is something that can also be understood when Jupiter enters the fourth house, because the Jupiter is our inner emotional nature, and the fourth house is our inner emotional nature. And when Jupiter is affecting that, Jupiter is generous, Jupiter is kind, Jupiter is happy. So without looking at the dignity of Jupiter, just understanding its fourth house position is a nice position for Jupiter. Again, the fourth house is the house of the fourth sign, and the fourth sign is Cancer, and Jupiter is exalted in dignity in the sign of Cancer. So we can understand, as far as a house position, that the fourth house and the ninth house are one of Jupiter's best positions. So this is a nice position of Jupiter for the Libra ascendancy. What it will do is it will create opportunities to be happy, opportunities to be joyful, Also, the fourth house has to do with home. So you can be living in a larger home because, again, as far as the Navagrahas, Jupiter is the largest planet. So again, Jupiter entering this energy of the fourth house can create a lot of expansion in the home. And what's interesting is, as we mentioned earlier, there's a Saturn transit, which is coinciding with this Jupiter transit. And Saturn represents, isolation, quietness. And again, although things are changing, we're living in this time of the coronavirus. This coronavirus energy can definitely be understood as the Saturn and Jupiter energy, which is in the fourth house. On one side of it, you have a vibration, which is you're stuck in your home. And that's the debilitation of Jupiter here. You might feel as if you're stuck in your home and you're not doing anything positive. You're lazy, you have bad habits, you're not cleaning your home, you're not cooking in the home. This is the potential, if we do not do that work, that the debilitation is challenging us along, your home will fall into a complete mess. Your home will fall into complete disarray. And Saturn, when it's conjunct with Jupiter, can represent, if we don't follow our spiritual path, then the resulting effect is depression. The resulting effect is sadness. And so on one side of the spectrum, you have a real challenge here in which you're supposed to make your home into a temple as a Libra ascendancy during this time. But it's debilitated. So you don't have a guru in your house. You don't have a priest in your house. You don't necessarily have the education that you would like to have in your house, although with YouTube and the various technological advances, there is more capability there. But it does show that you need to do the work necessary to be happy during this time. That means don't isolate. If you're sad, don't identify with it, because again, as we identify with our emotions, we let them grow strength. We don't want these negative emotions to grow strength. So we must do proper spiritual practice at this time. Jupiter is a planet of bhakti. So when you do the bhakti practices within your own home, chanting, pranayama, meditation, Ayurvedic lifestyle, then the debilitation of Jupiter is actually causing your spiritual growth at this time, because yes, it's more challenging, but there's no better time to actually do the work and get the reward. But because of Jupiter's debilitated state, you might not want to. You might just want to sit in front of the fire with a cup of hot chocolate and fall asleep on the couch. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but Jupiter is this planet which pushes us towards spiritual ideals. And so I do believe there is this push towards making the home into the temple, making our lifestyle more spiritually oriented. And this is also the house of the mother. Maybe there are challenges with Libra Lugna's mothers during this time. Maybe because Jupiter is also the guru, but the last person most people want to be their guru is their mother. But the mother sometimes automatically takes that guru role in our lives. As I mentioned, I have Jupiter in the fourth house. My mom has always been teaching me things throughout my life, whether I ask her or not. So I've come to appreciate that about her. But because of this debilitation of Jupiter right now, and also Saturn's conjunctive effect, it can be difficult as far as the female figures in our life, the motherly figures in our life. Are we able to take their advice? Because when Jupiter is exalted and in a good position, we do well with criticism. We do well with challenges. But this debilitated effect of Jupiter says that we might not do well with criticism. When we receive constructive criticism, maybe as a Libra Lugna, we take it personally, when really that constructive criticism is there to support us, is there to help us grow, is there to help us evolve. Of course, our mothers aren't just saying something for the sake of it, or our spiritual teachers aren't just saying something for the sake of it. They want to help us grow. They want to help us evolve. And so that's a very important energy here to mention about the Libra transit for the debilitation of Jupiter. Two other subtle effects as we look at the rulership of Jupiter's houses on this chart. Jupiter rules the third house because of Sagittarius, Danus. When you're looking at the Sagittarius of Bhava of the third house, Sagittarius is a very humanitarian, moral, and ethical energy. But Jupiter is debilitated. So again, when no one is looking, are we truly our highest self? That's the question that the Libra Lugna has to ask themselves. Yes, of course, when we're around other people, our behavior gets a little bit better. But for the Libra transit of the Jupiter debilitation, it's in this third house, which is the Upachaya house, which is the self-improvement evolutionary house. And this has to do with, are we willing to do our own work to help us grow? And it goes back to that taking constructive criticism well, looking at yourself in the mirror, looking at your moral imperfections, looking at your lesser qualities as an individual, and being strong enough to want to work on them, to want to grow on them. And because Sagittarius is a moral, ethical energy, you're really trying to grow morally and ethically. That means to be more of service, to do more kind things, to open the door for people. Let's even bring up the mask, not to get too political, but let's say that you don't like to wear a mask for whatever reason. Still, morally, ethically speaking, it's not just about you, it's about other people. And you would want to wear that mask out of respect for other people. It's the moral and ethical thing to do if you're going to be around other people. But the thing about the debilitation of Jupiter, it's saying, well, I don't believe in it. It's my way or the highway, so I'm not going to do it. But then you're risking other people's lives. I don't think that's fair, without saying whether it's right or wrong to wear a mask or not. It's about doing it for other people, morally and ethically speaking, So again, we're looking at this vibration of allowing yourself to grow morally and ethically, doing the right thing to make other people feel safe, to make other people feel supported. And as far as morals and ethics, we can also apply it to business. Again, there might be opportunities for financial gains here, but at what cost? Do not sacrifice financial gain for a lack of moral or ethical action. The next effect is the Pisces Bhava effect on the 6th house here. The Pisces Bhava effect, again, is going to create a more philosophical, spiritual, intuitive energy, and it's in the 6th house here. This 6th bhava here has a lot to do with service, which is something that we've talked about with this Libra transit as well. This 6th house of service being activated by the Piscean energy is going to create a more spiritual, philosophical approach to the things that you do, to the work that you do, to the service that you do. Again, there's this effect of isolation and people being stuck in their homes for the most part, even though things are starting to change and people are starting to get out of their homes. But this debilitation is, okay, well, has this been an opportunity for me to create a more spiritual lifestyle for myself? It's a great opportunity, because the debilitation effects makes you work harder, and the Piscean energy is supporting a spiritual evolution towards your work, towards your service. But just again, because spirituality is being supported here, doesn't mean that each native or each individual chooses that along their path. So again, it is about having faith. It's about having faith, but also doing the work. So it's a combination of having faith in your life and trying to apply that to work. This is also Upachaya house. So again, the 3rd house and 6th house, both Upachaya houses, self-improvement, evolutionary energy encourages us to look at the mirror and not take criticism too harshly, but rather use it as fuel, as motivation to help us grow. The last effect that I want to mention about this 6th house is the 6th house is the house of enemies. Now, Jupiter's debilitated effect on this house and being wisdom and understanding and knowledge might mean that you have enemies that you can't see during this effect of the Jupiter debilitated transit, especially if you're a Libra Lugna. This means that you might not be able to see that properly. But nonetheless, Pisces has a lot to do with intuition. So we really want to use our intuition here to help understand who are my friends, who's helping me grow spiritually, and who are my enemies, and who's bringing me down. And this is actually even deeper as we get more into it, because not the person that we prefer to be around is necessarily the best person for us to be around, especially with the debilitated effect of Jupiter. Just because we enjoy their company, sometimes it's because those people are convenient for us to spend time with, but they don't push us to grow. They don't push us to evolve. This is an energy which the Libra transit really wants to embrace, is that I actually want to be around the people that make me uncomfortable. Well, why would you want to be around the people that make you uncomfortable? Is because there's a relationship between discomfort and growth. If everything was always comfortable, if everything was always easy, there would be no growth. So again, we want to push ourselves, especially as the Libra Lagna, to be uncomfortable during this transit. So I hope that covers the Libra ascendancy aspect before we start moving on to the Scorpio. How did that seem, Nav?
Yeah, that was very thorough and beautifully explained. Thank you, Kṣaṇāti.
My pleasure. So next, let's discuss the Scorpio transit. Now, the Scorpio transit, before we even get into this pack third house, which we began to discuss a little bit, but it's a little different with Jupiter's ascendancy. First of all, for the Scorpio Lagna, Jupiter is a functional benefic. Unlike for the Libra Lagna, it's a little more challenged because of Venus's and Jupiter's relationship, but Mars and Jupiter have a nice relationship. But as you can see, K2 is in Scorpio right now. And when K2 enters Scorpio, it goes into exaltation. So again, this is an incredibly profound transit for the Scorpio ascendancy, is this nodal shift, the south node K2, really affecting the Scorpio ascendancy. See, because K2 is the moksha karaka. The moksha karaka energy means that the person is growing spiritually beyond their recognition, beyond their imagination. This is an incredible time for transformation to the highest potential for the Scorpio ascendancy. So the debilitation of Jupiter, one of the things that means, well, on one side of it for the Scorpio Lagna, they're evolving beyond their greatest imagination. On another side of the Scorpio ascendancy, they have no idea how they're growing. They have no idea how they're evolving because of Jupiter's debilitated state. But again, something we mentioned as we look at this third house, which is being primarily activated through the debilitation of Jupiter, this has to do, again, with the self-improvement energies. But again, Scorpios are a little bit aggressive and they're also a little bit sensitive. Or they're a lot aggressive and a lot of sensitive. Again, I have my sun in Mercury and Jyeshta, so I know what it is to have a Scorpio vibration personally. But as you look at this vibration of the debilitated Jupiter, it can be very challenging because we as Scorpios, we're sensitive and we're also deep. And we also have this emotional nature. And so criticism isn't always easy for Scorpio vibrations to digest. But the primary effect of Jupiter at this time is on that third house. That effect of Jupiter being on the third house here means, okay, it's going to be quite difficult to grow if we don't try as a Scorpio Lagna during this period. Again, this could mean that even though there are lots of opportunities for the Scorpio Lagnesh to grow and evolve during this time period, it's not necessarily going to happen unless they put the action towards it. Because again, Scorpio is ruled by Mars and nothing manifests for the Scorpio Lagna without sound action. And so this sound action must be applied here for the evolution of the Scorpio. Now, the third house, again, Jupiter is Guru Deva, the evolution of our spiritual potential, the realization of the Guru within. And we have to look in the mirror and work on ourselves and want to evolve and grow during this period. One of the things that's worth mentioning about this transit on the third house is this is a house of communication and expression. Now, for the Scorpio energy, and I'll admit this for me personally, sometimes my words, they come out like flames. They come out like swords. Now, I'm always trying to speak the truth, but sometimes I'll end up hurting people's feelings because I speak the truth very bluntly and very intensely, and some people don't want to hear the truth. Now, I think if you're coming to an astrologer for a consultation, hopefully you want to hear the truth, but not always. And so this energy for the Scorpio ascendancy is the evolution of our speech, is the evolution of our words, very strongly for the Scorpio ascendancy during this period. So even though you might have, as a Scorpio ascendancy, a predisposition to curse, a predisposition to say sharp words, a predisposition to make jokes out of serious things, there is a time and place for all of that. But it's not in our work that we do, and it's not in our evolution of our lives for the most part. So one of the things that Jupiter is doing during this transit is it's going to help us improve our speech as Scorpio vibrations, so that we say what we mean and mean what we say and don't hurt people's feelings in the process. And also, sometimes if we use curse words or use crude or harsh language, that's not received as well by the sensitive individual, by the person who doesn't curse or doesn't understand crude things. They'll just be bothered by what the Scorpio ascendancy says. So again, there is a challenge during this period of being able to communicate with a more sattvic tongue. But because of the debilitation of Jupiter, it can be tamasic or rajasic in the beginning with our speech. But again, as the evolutionary energy suggests, you want to catch yourself cursing. So again, if you're a Scorpio Lagna, you have this transit in your chart, so you're talking, and you curse, or you say something crude. There's nothing wrong with that, but it might be like, okay to say, oh, I'm sorry, and then say the same thing again in a different way without cursing or without bringing the crude energy into it. So that's just a little helpful tool for the Scorpio ascendancy during this period. And then also, this is the house of siblings. So this energy, especially younger siblings. So if you have younger siblings during this transit, and you're a Scorpio ascendancy, that might mean that even though your siblings are younger, they have a lot to teach you. Now, as an older sibling, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and Mars rules this house for me. I don't necessarily want to hear any kind of advice from my younger siblings. But the evolutionary energy here is, again, we talked about taking constructive criticism and using it to help us grow. Well, that's going to come from our younger siblings. Again, age is something that manifests, and we think about age and we're like, okay, well, we're older than that person, so we must be wiser than them. We must have more knowledge than them. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because the Atma, the soul, is many, many lifetimes of age. And so it doesn't really matter what age the person is in this Jivatman, in this physical body. It really doesn't matter as much, because we don't know the age of the soul of the person. So as we think about younger people, especially our younger siblings, let us not think of them based on their physical age in this body, but let us try to understand them as an eternal soul in which the age doesn't matter, so that we can take their advice better. Now, some subtle effects here, secondary effects of this transit. Sagittarius is affecting the 2nd house. This is moral and ethical energy into the house of wealth. So that means that although it's debilitated, which might mean, okay, there's opportunities to grow financially, this is also the house of food. So one of the things that's intense for the Scorpio Lagnesh at this time, because of this Jupiter transit, it is increasing more moral and ethical energy in terms of the work that we do. Let us not benefit financially from immoral or unethical means, So that means let us not take advantage of people. Let us not get money off of other people's lack of money. That's something that's happened during coronavirus with various rich businessmen and women and business people. You see the richest of the rich getting richer and richer, and the middle class and the poor and the lower poverty class getting poorer and poorer. Well, that doesn't seem fair at all. That doesn't seem fair or just at all. So if you're a Scorpio Lagna and you have a lot of money, let's give some of it to charity. Let's give some of it to help support local communities who are stricken by poverty and are stricken with the lack of food. The secondary effect on this house is also food, moral and ethical energy. Let's be careful about what we eat. Let's not eat too much. And also, because of the debilitation of Jupiter, let's not eat too little. Let's find moderation there. And we'll talk more about that for the Sagittarius Ascendant, because that's going to really show up for them too. The next energy is the Pisces energy on the 5th house. This has to do with children, creativity, offspring, education. So the debilitation of Jupiter is just like we don't want to hear our younger siblings give us advice, but it's very important during this period. Let's say you have children. Now, a lot of the times when we think of as being a parent, that we're the ones teaching our children. But those of us who are more spiritually evolved, have spiritual potential, actually understand that the children has more to teach us than we have to teach the child. Now, of course, as a parent, it's a responsibility to teach the child. But this transit, especially with the Ketu Moksha Karka exaltation and Jupiter's debilitated effect leading back to the 3rd house, depositing in the 3rd house, this energy of affecting the offspring by the Piscean energy is the child might have intuitive wisdom. The child might have intuitive knowledge, which they are expressing to the parent. And it's up to the responsibility of the parent, especially as a Scorpio Lugnesh during this time, to be able to appreciate, understand, and assimilate wisdom from their children. So that means, again, to take constructive criticism from your child and not ignore it. To be able to use that information to help you grow is highly productive during this period. Also, because of the Piscean energy affecting this 5th house of creativity, as you grow and evolve spiritually and you allow that spiritual higher guru energy to come into your life, you may notice new hobbies, new creative outlets coming into your life because of this Piscean energy. So you do want to kind of educate yourself on potential new hobbies and new creative outlets for yourself as a Scorpio Lugnesh. So I hope that was helpful for the Scorpio Lugnesh. Navjeet, I know that you might be appreciating it.
Yes. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And I'm a Scorpio as well. So I've been really working on my speech during this period. I've been cursing a lot more, but I haven't cursed any during this presentation. And in general, I'm trying to be watchful of my speech to make sure that I don't say anything which might hurt someone's feelings by accident. So, that's one of the main recommendations for the Scorpio ascendancy during this period.
Wonderful.
So next we'll get into the Sagittarius transit. The Sagittarius transit is particularly significant because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So guess what? It's going to be affecting this vibration. So actually I see that this is a 2020 transit.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Capricorn and then I'll go back into Sagittarius.
Sure.
So this vibration of the Capricorn ascendancy is also very significant during this time because that's where Jupiter is actually traveling in right now. This effect of Jupiter traveling in this sign of Capricorn right now is incredibly important, but it's affecting the Lugnesh. It's affecting the ascendancy. This effect on the ascendancy is pretty powerful because it affects the Ayurvedic constitution of the individual. So we do want to talk about it from a health perspective first and foremost. This health perspective means that as a Capricorn ascendant, it's very important for you to think of Jupiter as a Kapha planet. A Kapha planet means that it will be affecting your constitution in a Kapha way. This effect in a Kapha way on the constitution means that there's a possibility for weight gain and weight growth during this period. There's a possibility that there may be an expansion in the physical body of the individual, and that means that you need to pacify Kapha. We mentioned that there's some isolation, staying in the home, but look at Mars right now in its natural sign, kind of pushing the person to burn through that extra Kapha energy. And even though that it will be joining Rahu soon, the Mars, just in general, this effect of Jupiter expanding the spiritual wisdom of the individual means that one of the most challenging things for the Capricorn ascendancy during this period is going to be Prajna Parad. Prajna Parad is this vibration in which we commit crimes against our own wisdom. This is the actual destruction for the Capricorn ascendancy during this period. As you can see, there is some strong influence of Rahu in the 5th house, Ketu in the 11th house, meaning the nodes are splitting this energy, and the 5th house energy has to do with our education. Our 9th house energy has to do with our gains. We will not have growth and happiness with our children. We will not have growth and happiness with our desires if we commit Prajna Parad, if we commit crimes against wisdom. That means that if you know something is not good for you, then the Capricorn ascendancy has a responsibility, has a duty to listen to that. If they don't listen to that, there will be large consequences. Because if you are the transit of the Capricorn ascendancy, you have a lot of adversity, you have a lot of challenges during this period, and it might be easy to give in to the lower self, the debilitated side of Jupiter. That can do with food, that can do with diet, that can do with relationships, that can do with drugs, alcohol, all of these things which are being influenced for the Capricorn ascendancy right now, that you probably know in your higher self, in your guru self, in your spiritual self, this is not a good idea. Now, before this transit of Jupiter was in effect, maybe you could get away with it to a larger extent. But now God is going to hold you responsible. God is going to hold you accountable. That means you have to listen to that vibration. You have to listen to that energy and not have the extra slice of pizza, not have the extra ice cream, not have the glass of wine. This is all very important to understand as the Capricorn ascendancy. It's really going to be if I make this bad decision, it's going to affect my Ayurvedic doshas in a negative way. So let me not make that decision. And in the process of making the right decision, even though the debilitation of Jupiter challenges it, it's also encouraging you to grow into your higher self, to realize the Guru Deva within yourself. This is very important during this period. Now, this is also going to affect our identity, because the 1st house has a lot to do with our individual identity. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger is one of the best ways of understanding this transit and how it's affecting Capricorn Lagnesh. Because Capricorn Lagnesh, they already have lots of adversity in their life. They already have lots of challenges in their life. But their ability to meet those challenges and not struggle through them, but rather evolve through them during this period is going to help them have much more self-esteem. But if you do not listen to your higher self, if you default to your lesser practices, then you will have a bad sense of identity. This also has to do with the true sense of who we are versus the false ego, because Jupiter in its debilitation, it might make us think that we really do know everything as a Scorpio, as a Capricorn Lagnesh. But that is certainly not the case. We do never know anything. He who thinks he knows nothing truly knows it all. That's one of my favorite quotes. And so that's a good vibration to understand this energy of the Capricorn transit. Is our identity with ourselves humble? Because any kind of arrogance, any kind of excessive pride, anyone who thinks as a Capricorn ascendant, I am better than this person, I am morally superior than this person, I am spiritually more superior than this person, is in for a very big fall down to earth. And I believe that the taller the tree, the bigger the fall. And this is certainly true for the Capricorn ascendancy. Keep yourself humble. Keep your ego humble during this period, because if you're not, it is going to be crushed by Jupiter and Saturn, who are affecting your ascendancy over this period. There are some other effects. Pisces has this effect on the 3rd house. This is intuition, affecting communication and speech. So this means that your speech, how you express yourself, it might become more intuitive over this period. This means that what you want to say as a Capricorn Lagnesh, it might be coming from a higher spiritual place. Now, what does that mean if we don't have a spiritual program, if we don't have a spiritual practice? It means that your speech is going to be horrible. So it's necessary for you to have a strong spiritual practice during this period as a Capricorn ascendancy, so that you can let that higher guru and the spiritual energy, which comes from Svarga, the celestial dimension, come down to you through your crown chakra into your throat chakra, so it must be expressed to the world. We have this potential for intuitive energies as Capricorn ascendancies to travel through us during this period, but it requires us to do recitation of mantra, pranayama, yoga, and meditation, so that we can facilitate a clear channel as to be able to properly express ourselves. Also, the 12th house is being ruled by Dhanus, so it has a Sagittarius bhava. This Sagittarius energy, this 12th house is about letting go. Again, it's a moksha house, and so when people have energies there, they're thinking, oh, I'm spiritual, that's wonderful. It's more having to do with letting go of that which doesn't serve you. And so the moral and ethical vibration, which is influencing that 12th house with the Sagittarius energy, means as the Capricorn Lagna during this time and the debilitated effect of Jupiter, maybe your chart is supporting you to help let go of things that doesn't serve you. And that goes hand in hand with the Prajna Parad, crimes against wisdom energy, which the Capricorn ascendancy is evolving with over this period. But just because we know something no longer serves us doesn't mean that we're able to let go of it easily, especially because of the debilitation of Jupiter. You have to work 3 times as hard. So if you're not able to let go of it, the Navagraha, these blessed planets, they will make you let go of it. And it's always easier when we let go of something that we think we need to let go of than we have the gods, the devas, the Navagrahas do it for us, because they're not always as soft or gentle as we can be as we try to make these own positive choices in our life. But if it's forced upon us, especially with the debilitation of Jupiter and Saturn in its natural sign of Capricorn traveling together, you actually want to take these preemptive steps in order to kind of let go of the things that don't serve you, whether that be an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy romantic relationship. Because again, Jupiter has this karaka for marriage and partnership and these various things. And so one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of clients during this period is there's an ending of some very challenging relationships, but it's hard for them to end them. One or both partners, they don't want to end it, but it's actually very beneficial during this period. If you're in a relationship with someone who is not serving your highest spiritual growth, is not serving your highest spiritual evolution, throw that relationship in the garbage, because if not, you're going to go into the garbage with it. So you have to understand this vibration of being able to, maybe it's a job that isn't serving you. As Capricorn energy has a lot to do with our job, our occupation, our careers. And so this activation of the 12th house, and for the Capricorn ascendancy, you might have a job that it pays well, you're recognized well, you have a good reputation, but it's not serving you spiritually. So it's going to take courage and strength and determination to get away from it, but there's nothing that's going to be more beneficial. So I hope that's helpful for understanding the Capricorn transit for the debilitation of Jupiter.
Kṣaṇāti, I had a question. Can people also see these energies from their D9 ascendant too? Do you take that? Like, what do you think? Do you think it's more prominent in D1 or?
Yes, I when I'm doing a natal analysis, I look at the D9 and I understand that the D9 transit is going to be pretty significant as far as how this transit will be impacting them. But one of the things that I've noticed about the D9 during this period, when I look at it, is that Jupiter is moving, it's going to get split almost, right? So it's actually very interesting. In a lot of D9s during this period, Jupiter is exalted because it's in Cancer, which is its highest dignity. So again, that's something that makes a lot of sense when you look at this transit, because Jupiter is the spiritual work that we have to do. And the D1 has to do with who we are without our spiritual evolution.
Right.
So it means that, yeah, there's going to be a ton of challenge. There's going to be a ton of challenge if we're not connected to our spiritual path. But I believe that when someone enters their spiritual path and focuses on their spiritual path, that's why they say that the D9 is activated at the age of 35, at the age of 40.
Right.
But that's not necessarily true, because there are 20-year-olds, there are 15-year-olds who are leading a spiritual life who are completely manifestation of their D9. And there are also 70, 80-year-old people who have no spirituality, who are living in their D1 their whole life. But if you look at this D9 vibration for Jupiter, it's exalted. So if you are on your spiritual path, there's no greater evolution than with your energy of Jupiter right now. So I think if you're going to look at your D9 for this transit and you don't consider yourself spiritual or religious, you're wasting your time. But if you do consider yourself to be a spiritual person, let's say you have a religious practice, you have a spiritual practice, you have a guru, you do daily mantras, you have a daily sadhana, you do pranayamas, then the D9 is just as important as the D1. But it has to be a spiritually oriented lifestyle for the D9 really to take effect. But I think it's so fascinating that Jupiter is exalted in the D9 right now, which means, hey, listen, if you are on your spiritual path, that's why when I learned the D9 chart, it was called the spirituality chart or the spiritual evolution chart, in addition to Navamsha. Understanding this energy being like, okay, well, if I'm not going to work on myself spiritually, Jupiter is debilitated. But if I am going to work on myself spiritually, Jupiter is exalted. And again, this is even more significant as the Nichbanga Yoga, which is going to happen after Jupiter returns back to Aquarius on September 14th. It goes from Aquarius to Capricorn, and it'll actually be partially exalted in the D1. So that kind of means that, listen, even if you aren't spiritual, this period from September 14th into mid-October, you're going to still grow along these Jupiter lines. But if you have a spiritual lifestyle, a sadhana, a spiritual practice, what you do daily every day, then you're living in the D9, and looking at the D9 is going to be really helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So let's get back into Sagittarius. I emailed myself the updated Sagittarius charts here. So let me just pull them down and we'll look at those. So here is the North Indian and South Indian. Great. So as we look at this vibration for the Sagittarius ascendancy, it's very, very important and helpful because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So of course, it's a functional benefic, but it's debilitated. So that's very important to understand here. And the Jupiter Sagittarius ascendancy energy causes the person to spiritually grow, to spiritually evolve, especially morally and ethically. Again, I say that you don't have to be spiritual to be a good person. It sure does help, but you don't have to be. And over the course of the lifetime for the Danu Sagittarius Lagnesh, they're growing morally and ethically, becoming a better person, willing to contribute lots of things to society, willing to become the best person they can be and not do things that hurt people. So that's a very Jupiterian energy as is. The primary effect of Jupiter during this transit is on the second house. This is as on an Artabhava house. Now, Saturn is there, and it's worth mentioning Saturn's position here as Shanaishcharya, the slow mover, because this slow moving effect of the rewards of Artabhava might mean that there are financial challenges during this period. And so the enemy of Saturn, well, not enemy, but at least neutral, doesn't always do well here. Jupiter is also being there, which is saying, okay, well, things are moving slowly, but Jupiter is an expansive planet. There's also this potential for growth during this period. This potential for growth during this period actually supports the Sagittarius ascendancy to grow financially during this period, as long as they're patient and do things morally and ethically. But again, you have to work harder with the debilitation in order to get the effects. What does that mean? I believe for the Sagittarius Lugna, there will be opportunities during this period in what you can gain selfishly. But even though that you may think that you're gaining selfishly, which means you're gaining quick rewards, in the long run, that's going to be very catastrophically negative. So the question is, do you want to take the short road now to get to the long road later, or do you want to take the long road now to get to the short road later? The short road now means, okay, here's an opportunity to make some money, but it's at the expense of my employees. So you're thinking of someone who's a manager, who's an owner, who runs some kind of business that other people are a part of. They might be able to grow financially like the rich are doing right now, especially in my country. But at what expense? For people losing their jobs, the factory workers are not getting paid, the conditions of the places are very, very poor, and this is very, very sad. But this energy of Capricorn and Jupiter's debilitation effect is saying, okay, well, how can I give back even though I may be the boss, even though I might be a CEO, even though I might be a manager? How can I benefit the welfare of the community? Because at its core, Jupiter is a selfless, humanitarian, altruistic planet, which encourages us to our higher divine self, our selfless nature, generous nature, humanitarian nature, taking care of others, but it's debilitated. So this might mean that you're gaining at the loss of others. This is also very important because this is the house of food. That means very much during this period that Jupiter is going to be very interested in food, but it can actually create an eating disorder because you have Jupiter debilitated, which means your wisdom as to what you eat, and Kapha, right? Kapha is debilitated here. So you're not being as wise with what you eat. And so how about extra sweets? How about processed food, fast food, carbohydrates, lots of fats? And also there's a lack of exercise, which can be an energy here. So you're looking at increasing and eating whatever we want and a lack of exercise. That's not going to be good for the health of the individual. And that's probably why you see Rahu's exaltation here in the 6th house, which is a Vikriti house, which can definitely show in Taurus some weight gain. But again, you have Saturn there and you have Rahu affecting the health too. So you're having a push between Kapha and Vata. Sometimes you're eating that might mean, yeah, I'm eating. Oh, I feel so bad with how much I've eaten. I feel like a gross pig. So now I'm going to starve myself. And that's not healthy either. That is actually not loving yourself, not taking care of your body. What you want to do as a Sagittarius transit with this period is, have 3 healthy, balanced meals throughout the day and maybe 1 light snack. But the predisposition here is to have 2 gross, overly consumed, 1,500, 2,000 calories meal twice a day, and then before bed, full of sugar, full of candy. This is not something that's healthy, but there is a vulnerability because, again, you're looking at 4 planets traveling in there right now. Eventually, it'll just be Saturn and Jupiter. But this energy means, okay, we really have to work on balancing what we put in our mouth here. As far as sugar, as far as coffee, cigarettes, whatever it might be, you have to be more mindful of what you're putting in your mouth here. Some other effects is that Pisces has this effect on the 4th house, the house of home. This house of home is intuitive, being influenced by the Piscean energy. This might mean that the home, your intuition around how you should keep your home, it's greater. You know, that might mean you want to, again, make your home into a temple, make your home into a spiritual place. But that's not always necessarily going to be easy because of the debilitation of Jupiter. We have to create a clear channel. And that's why what you put into your body in terms of food for the Sagittarius ascendant is what's going to create a clear channel to allow a healthy aspect of Pisces to come through in the home. But if we're all blocked up with excessive amounts of processed meat, with excessive amounts of sugar, with excessive amounts of mind-altering substances, then there's no way that this fourth house energy of Pisces is going to manifest in a positive way. It's just going to manifest into your home being a lot less more spiritual than you would like it to be. So those are just some of the effects of the Sagittarius transit for the debilitated Jupiter. I hope that was beneficial as well for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we have two more ascendancies to cover here. We have Aquarius and Pisces. Okay, great. So for the Aquarius transit here, it's very important to understand that, again, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And, oh gosh, looks like 2020 here. So we'll get back to Aquarius and we'll go to Pisces to start. So we'll get back to it. Don't worry, everybody.
Sure.
So the next thing that we're going to discuss is the Pisces transit. This Pisces transit is very significant because, again, Pisces is ruled by the planet Jupiter. This effect of the natural rulership of Jupiter over Pisces means that Jupiter is a functional benefic and tends to do very well for the Pisces ascendancy. But again, Jupiter is debilitated. So that can actually be a little bit challenging because, again, Pisces is this energy of connecting to Svarga, connecting to the celestial dimension. This connection to the celestial dimension might mean that, okay, I'm trying to evolve spiritually. I'm trying to evolve in my intuition during this period. I'm trying to allow myself to connect to God through spiritual sadhana, through pranayama, through meditation, but Jupiter is debilitated. So that might mean, okay, we might know what we need to do to grow spiritually. We might know what we need to do to evolve spiritually, but does that mean that we're doing it? Not necessarily. So again, there is a responsibility to listen to your higher self, to listen to your intuition, to be able to respond to it and think of it as something that you have to understand and follow throughout your everyday life. Because if you don't, it's not going to be positive. Now, one of the things that this relates to is that Jupiter's primary positing here is in the 11th house. We haven't seen the 11th house forcefully activated in any of the ascendancies that we've gone through so far. This is very interesting, again, because one of the things that we talked about is knowing what you need to do to keep your spiritual channel pure. But the 11th house is the house of friendship. And so who is influencing us is one of the most important things to understand as a Pisces ascendancy during this period. Because again, you have Jupiter in its debilitated state and Saturn in its natural position. So there may be some isolating energies. Saturn is in my 11th house. So I always believe that having a few good friends is more important than having 1,000 average ones. You know, so I just have a few very close friends I'm friends with everybody, but I only have a few close friends. And that's important to understand about this Saturn transit on the 11th house is that you have to become more selective about who you call your friend, who you trust, because Jupiter represents, again, the guru, the teacher, but it's debilitated during this transit. That might mean that you think someone is your friend, you think someone there is to help you, but they're not. Because one of the things that happens, especially for the Pisces Lagna, is the Pisces Lagna spiritual frequency their spiritual vibration, it's meant to keep growing throughout their life as their consciousness evolves, as their spiritual sadhana evolves. But this transit of the debilitation of Jupiter might mean that you have certain friends which are tamasic. You have certain friends which are not spiritual. And even though you've grown in your spirituality, you have other friends who are not. And what's going to happen is these people that you call your friends or who you think are your friends, that are not really your friends, but you think they are actually going to bring your energy down so that they can meet you spiritually. So you're sacrificing your spiritual frequency, you're sacrificing your consciousness. And then when it comes to this Pisces energy about being a clear channel and trying to connect spiritually, it's going to be extremely difficult. So this might mean that as far as your friends, I don't care how many friends that you have. If you're a Pisces ascendancy, you have to be much more careful about who you trust. And one thing about Pisces Lugna that I know, they like to trust everyone. But what Jupiter is trying to teach you during this period is trust is not something that you give out to everyone. Trust is something that you earn. Trust is something that as a friend in your life, they have to earn. And if someone who has broken your trust, which is actually a common thing which might show up with the debilitation of Jupiter on the 11th house, if someone has broken your trust, do not be quick to let them have a second chance. I know that, again, we want to be compassionate, especially as the Pisces ascendancy. We want to give people a second chance. But again, if you give people a second chance without there being enough time, Saturn, Kṣaṇāti, if you are going to give a second chance, let it happen slowly. Because if you give a second chance too quickly, then the person does not learn their lesson. They're much more likely to repeat the same mistake and to hurt you again. You know, one of the things, let's say that you're in a serious relationship during this period, and God forbid your partner has an affair on you. Well, this energy might be like, well, I'm lonely, it's COVID, and I understand how everyone has their problems, and so I forgive you. No, don't forgive them. Kick them out of the house. Tell them that they need to earn your love back, that they need to earn your trust back, and you cannot forgive them for their infidelity for 3 months, 6 months. This transit isn't over till the end of November. Make them wait until the end of November when this transit is over before you start forgiving them. Otherwise, they're going to do it to you again. We have to understand that our patience and how we stand strong when trusts are broken within us is actually helping teach those people stronger lessons so that they might actually become a friend. This even breeds a greater philosophical discussion of what a friend or an enemy truly is. And a friend is not just someone that you hang out with. A friend is someone who has your best interests at heart and is your ally and is willing to help you grow.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be able to trust that aspect of friendship. And so what is an enemy? It's not someone who wants to hurt you. It's not someone who wants to kill you, although obviously those are enemies if they do. But an enemy is just someone who's selfish, someone who doesn't have your best interests at heart, which means they care more about themselves than they do about you. And if someone is going to cheat on you, if someone is going to hurt you, if someone is going to violate their trust, then they care more about their selfish desires and pleasures than they do about you. And so you have to give them a hard, tough love response so that they may come around to actually learn the lesson. So the 9th house is also affected on this transit of Pisces, which is affecting the career. There's this chance for moral and ethical expansion in the career. There's this chance for recognition in the career because of Jupiter's effect on the 10th house. But again, one of the things that happens when we grow in our career, when we expand in our career, is our egos tend to grow too. And this is the vulnerability for the Pisces Lugna and the 10th house effect on Jupiter from this Jupiter depositorship because of Sagittarius here. There might be some growth in your career. But if you let your ego grow with that promotion, with that new position, then it's not going to last. It's not going to be sustainable, and it might even come and go before the end of this transit, especially because Jupiter is moving into Aquarius, which is going to activate the 12th house. And so that might mean that if you're not humble in your growth in your career, then it will not last over the next couple years. So again, something that's important to remember as a Pisces ascendancy is, okay, maybe I'm experiencing some career growth during this time. Let it not go to my head. Let it not inflate my ego, because it's not going to last. And so, yeah, just that bit of advice as far as friends and who you trust during this period is probably the most important thing I want to mention for the Pisces Lugnesh. So the last, thank you. So the last one that we're going to do today is the Aquarius Transit. So let me just pull that up. Great. So the Aquarius Transit, which is actually, for those of you that don't know, I'm an Aquarius ascendant with Rahu. And so this effect is going to be affecting me and my fellow Aquarius brothers and sisters out there. This is a very significant transit for us. Now, it's already been difficult. You've been in it for a while because the 12th bhava, which is the moksha house, is going to be where Jupiter is positioned. And Saturn is positioned in this Drekana house. But whenever Malefic is ruling its own sign in a Drekana house, this is actually considered a positive yoga to some aspect. Now, one of the things about the debilitation of Jupiter on the 12th house, the 12th house, as I mentioned earlier, is about letting go of things. Again, those things that we let go of actually end up helping us and supporting us spiritually. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we want to let go of them. And if we don't let go of them, strong health challenges, because this is the house of lifelong illnesses. And so over the course of this period, if you don't let go of the things that are not meant to help you grow spiritually, meant to help you evolve, which is your spiritual path to moksha, you're supposed to let go of everything that doesn't serve you. If you don't, it could result in illness or disease that you have to deal with for the rest of your life. This is something that's very, very significant to understand during this period is, what is your spiritual sadhana? What is your spiritual practice, which helps you let go of the things that no longer serve you? Again, this might have to do with certain relationships that we have, certain foods, certain substances, certain habits, certain jobs, whatever it is in your life, what you may have gotten used to, which is a habit. Any kind of habits are removed by the 12th house. So this energy of Jupiter's transit on the 12th house, it's going to remove habits in your life. Now, this is also the subconscious and dream state. So it's kind of been interesting for me personally during this transit. I've had more dreams during this transit than I have had since I was a young child. And every night I'm having these vivid dreams where the progress that I am making in my life, I have the same progress in my dreams. The things that I've given up, the new lifestyle that I've had as a result of focusing on my spiritual evolution during this period, that's who I am in my dreams. My higher self is directly communicating to me in my dreams. And so for all of you Aquarius's Lugna out there, you have a blessing in what your dreams are going to communicate to you, what your gifts and what your challenges are, the good work that you've been doing and the work that you still need to do. So sometimes I wake up in the morning because of my dream. I know exactly what I need to do that day to grow, to evolve. This can be a very beneficial transit if you are an Aquarius ascendancy and you're willing to give up whatever you need to give up in order to spiritually grow. But because of the debilitation, that might mean that the thing that you want to have to give up is the thing that you've held onto the longest in your life. And so in the beginning, before you actually start trying to give it up, surrender it to God, let go of your will and your control and surrender to God's will and the ultimate will of the universe, you might actually think that the thing that you have to give up is something that you could never give up, and you expected to have it your whole life, whether it be a relationship or a habit or some other aspect of your lifestyle. But by giving it up, you are going to radically evolve and radically grow beyond your wildest dreams and imaginations. As Navjeet mentioned earlier, the D9, Jupiter is exalted right now. So the question is, do you want to not grow and not evolve and deal with health problems as a result of not giving up the things that you need to give up? Or are you willing to give them up, and therefore the gods have a special blessing for you to come? So some other gentle effects. The second effect of Pisces during this period, if you are a clear channel, if you are doing what you need to do to be pure, more sattvic because of this transit, then Pisces will reward you in your career. Pisces will reward you in your wealth by the depositorship of Jupiter through the second house. Your intuition will be stronger. Also, your ability to communicate what you're feeling and also download information from a higher source if you're doing spiritual practices is greater than ever. And Sagittarius affecting the 11th house means making new friends during this period. I've made more friends and actually legitimate good friends during this period that I want to maintain relationships with more than I have in almost any other period of my life since I've been an adult. And this energy of Sagittarius means those friends need to be moral and ethical. So now all of my friends, they're incredibly moral, they're incredibly ethical, they're completely sober, they have healthy lifestyles, they have healthy habits, they have healthy relationships. Because why would I want to be in a friendship with someone who isn't going to have that positive energy? Because again, we have a certain frequency, and when it comes to our friends, if they have a lower frequency and are not moral and ethical, then I'm going to get dragged down to their level, and other Aquarius ascendancies are going to get dragged down to their level. So again, this is a period for new friendships, but make sure that these people are very pure. So that's the last thing I wanted to mention about the Aquarius ascendancy. And it was so nice having this time with you, Navjeet, and to discuss this debilitated transit of Jupiter through the middle of November. And I hope that was beneficial to both of our communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Kṣaṇāti. It's a good work as always. And thank you for enlightening us with all the profound knowledge and information. And it's wonderful and it's beautiful, just even talking about the friends, even in general, you know what I mean? Beside the transit, even having what kind of people you have around us and the energies, like if we are around positive people, we're going to uplift. Automatically, we're going to get uplifted. But if we are not, then yes, everything is in an influence, right? Yeah. So that was beautifully said. Thank you, Kṣaṇāti. So thank you. We'll be back with more videos with Kṣaṇāti. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give us a thumbs up. Take care all. Bye-bye.